On this episode, we chat with Tim from community rideshare service MuvMi.
So if you've seen MuvMi's cool electric tuk-tuks flying around Bangkok, you'll get a charge out of this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 to start a business sending boxes of Thai dirt back to Canada, but quickly found out that foreigners owning land here ain't something to joke about.
Apparently it is not. And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 22 years ago, fell in love with the satisfaction of correctly guessing how many cabs it's going to take before I find one that will take me where I want to go. So I never left.
You should get like 50% off your fare if you like. You're holding a sign up that says like 6, and if it's the sixth one, you get 50% off your fare.
I'm telling you, man, that's the key to life, is to make a game out of your misery.
It has helped me. I'll be honest with you. Really, you a long time ago, you said, just you're
just assume it's going to be 5. Assume it's going to be 5. Something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
We want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, Sanjayan Yan Rajasingham, who supports us at the show shout-out level. Stick around after our interview about electric tuk-tuks with the folks at MuvMi to hear why you should never learn Thai from Yan unless you like learning things backwards. We want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos of our interviews, a heads up to send questions to upcoming guests, and access to our Discord server to chat with me, Greg, and other listeners around the world. But best of all, patrons like Jan also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. On this week's bonus show, we chatted about Greg's Guns N' Roses concert experience with his son, the tendency of Thais to jump on the bandwagon with new food trends in Bangkok. This time it's all about new hamburger joints, and a story about how taxis in Bangkok will finally get a small increase to their fares. To learn how to become a patron, click the support button at the top of our website.
That's right. And as always, if you have a comment, a show idea, or just want to say hi, head to bangkokpodcast.com, click the little microphone button on the bottom right, and leave us a voicemail that we'll play on the show. And also one more thing before we jump into it, we are going to be having our year-end meetup on December 10th.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, if you are in town, that's Saturday, December 10th. I think it's Saturday. It's December 10th anyway. Details to come, but if you're hearing this and you're going to be in town, we hope to see you there, December 10th.
Absolutely. You got to make it.
Right on. All right. Well, in this episode, we chat to Tim Konceweiz from a company called MuvMi. Now, you might not have heard of MuvMi before, but you've probably seen their name around, usually on the side of one of their badass custom-made 6-seat electric tuk-tuks that are flying around town. But MuvMi is more than just that. It's an on-demand ride-sharing service that connects Bangkok's disparate neighborhoods with sort of a mesh transportation network that you can order up through their app. Now, Tim joins us to talk about the challenges of introducing a new transportation model in a city famous for its modes of transportation, why electric tuk-tuks aren't already the norm, and the future of community-driven and environmentally friendly neighborhood transportation in Bangkok. So here's my conversation with our buddy Tim from MuvMi. All right, Tim Konceweiz, welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. Let me know if I got your name right. You join a long list of people with difficult names. So Tim Konceweiz, is that right?
That is correct. Thank you so much, Greg. Appreciate the invite on the show.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm glad to have you here. I'm glad I got your name right. Well, mostly right.
It's good pronunciation.
How do the Thais handle Konceweiz?
They don't even try. Yeah, most people just call me Kun Tim, which I appreciate. But yeah, most do not. So I'm equally sensitive to mispronouncing other people's names. So I also ask people to pronounce their names. But yeah, I've not had too many try my last name.
That's good. So you're building bridges, right? Thais can mangle foreign names just like we can mangle Thai names.
Exactly. Yep.
So you're here to talk about MuvMi. And I'm really interested in this company, and it's really cool that we connected. We recently did a show on the best apps to use in Bangkok when you're getting around town and trying to build your life here. And a number of suggestions from people mentioned MuvMi. I've known of the app for a long time and the service it offers, and it seems really cool, although I've never really used it myself. But it's a really interesting product in a really interesting city for those products. So basically, it's an electric tuk-tuk service. It's more complicated than that, and we'll get into it in a little bit. But essentially, when you have the MuvMi app on your phone, you pull it up, you order a tuk-tuk to pick you up to take you to point B, and it's an electric tuk-tuk that you have in your fleet. So let's talk about that. Tell us about the company, how it started, and what it's trying to do and what problem it's trying to solve.
Yeah, so the company as a whole started back in 2016. It actually started in the Radhanakosin area to solve the pain point for customers that didn't have as much price transparency or consistent pricing with traditional tuk-tuks. So we introduced a service to add more standardized pricing to traditional tuk-tuks. It was largely for tourists at that time.
Right.
And then about 2 years later, in 2018, is when we launched our local passenger service, now MuvMi, in the Chula area. And that was geared more towards local residents, everyday commuters in the area. And as you mentioned, largely using an electric fleet of tuk-tuks. So we design and manufacture through a joint venture all of our vehicles and take the traditional tuk-tuk and made it electric. Which we think provides a much better passenger experience. So if you haven't had the chance to try one yet, please let me know. We'll try to get you one, Greg, to try out so you can compare as well. But simply put, MuvMi is an on-demand ride-sharing service that provides clean, affordable, and safe transportation around local communities in Bangkok. And we service now 12 different areas within Bangkok. And the service we're trying to provide customers is what we call microtransit. And if you're not familiar with microtransit, it's roughly, think a 5 mile or 8 kilometer radius service area. And it's to take passengers in local communities, either within their community or to BTS, MRT as first mile, last mile solutions. So we're not competing kind of with the Grab and some of the other services that will take you all across the city. We very much kind of sit in these zone-based models of microtransit just to commute people within their communities or to help them get to public transportation to get elsewhere around the city. But yeah, like I mentioned, largely a fleet of now almost 300 electric tuk-tuks. We plan to double that by the end of the year as well. So we are testing out a few other vehicle types. We launched Ratchada area about a week ago now, and we're testing some EV taxis in that area. So we're trying to see what are the right areas at the moment where we need to launch with the tuk-tuk? What are the areas that could be better serviced with a traditional four-wheel car, but still being electric, which again goes back to the mission of providing clean transportation. But yeah, we're excited by the opportunity to continue expanding across Bangkok.
That's really cool, man. I'm psyched about this, and I remember. There's a lot of different tangents I want to explore here, so I'll start with this one. I remember last year we had Kunwina on from the Thai Clean Air Network, and I brought up the question of like, Bangkok seems like the perfect city to be all electric tuk-tuks. Why isn't it already like that? And I can't remember her exact answer back then, but it was basically it's very complicated. What kinds of resistance have you found? Like, are there tuk-tuks? I mean, let's use the word mafia, but obviously we don't want to get too deep into that. Are there any like lobbying groups? Are there any small community groups that are like, no, we like things how they are now? What kind of difficulties are there with introducing this newer technology to an established system?
Yeah, so there's a few different interest groups. So I think you touched on one of them on the incumbents between wind motorbikes or traditional tuk-tuk operators who, like anything, right, when Grab was introduced or Uber when they tried, certainly didn't want their model upended. And we faced the same kind of resistance. So we had to work to partner with local communities and local police offices as well to make sure that we can still operate legally, of course, but also safe for our drivers and for our passengers. The other part of the coin is not just on the vehicle side. So you mentioned, the electric tuk-tuks or electric vehicles, but also on the infrastructure side around charging and where you're going to actually go to charge all these vehicles. So for us, we're fortunate. We have an energy partner that helps us provide the charging network, as well as we have other partners who help provide us the parking network to place those chargers in different buildings. Because as you can imagine, finding a lot of locations to install large charging infrastructure is not easy. So we need to build a partner network for both of those. So I'd say, the infrastructure side is another challenge that we face and that we need to work through. And then just operating the vehicles as well. So you need a special license to operate a tuk-tuk. You can only get a certain registration type to register the vehicles as well. And that's capped. So once you hit the cap, you need to go out and find people who are willing to sell their license plates and registrations if you want to increase more vehicles into your fleet. So certainly, on the administrative side, we need to work through all of that as well. And then on the consumer side, there's a bit of consumer education on what does an electric tuk-tuk actually mean. And our service is a bit unique. Like I mentioned, it's ride sharing. So one of the reasons we're able to get it so affordable, starting at just 10 baht for a trip, is because we allow people to share rides with other people that are going in the same direction or getting picked up near their same locations. But there's a lot of education that goes with that. And why is a stranger coming into my vehicle that I had planned to take to the local shopping mall or BTS? So there's education on our side from the consumer as well on here's how we kind of democratize EVs for everybody by enabling this ride sharing service, both on the vehicle side that we redesigned from the ground up to accommodate ride sharing. So it actually fits pretty comfortably 6 people inside. So that was to allow people to share their rides. And then also on the product side that we're able to match people going in the same direction. So,
so they're like quite larger than the regular tuk-tuk.
They are, yeah. So I moved to Bangkok a little under a year ago and was quite surprised to see all the people crammed into the traditional tuk-tuk and a bit of contortionist at times to fit a big group in. But
I mentioned a big guy like myself.
No. But ours were designed to fit hopefully comfortably. Most people feel at most 6 people in the vehicle. So from all the stakeholders around, current incumbents to government and regulatory, and then the customers, a bit of education and work on our side to expand as well.
There was a time about 10 years ago on New Year's Eve that we managed to get, I think it was eight people into a regular tuk-tuk, but alcohol was involved. It was late at night, 2 a.m. after fireworks and celebration, which I don't recommend. So it can be done, but not comfortably. So it's good to hear that now you have a more comfortable option.
I would have liked to seen a photo of the 8 people.
Well, I think there would have been if anyone had any spare hands to let go for hanging on to dear life, but it's a different story. So it's interesting because, electric tuk-tuks are great. It's a great idea. I'm all for it, 100%, fantastic. But really, when you're talking about getting a person from point A to point B, an electric tuk-tuk does the same thing as a regular tuk-tuk. So it must be hard to create that niche, create that market demand for a product that essentially, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is not really offering anything fantastically new in terms of its base functionality. Yeah. So
at a basic level, essentially, we're just trying to get people around their local communities with our transportation service, and in large part, we offer that with electric tuk-tuks. To your point. A lot of people want to go from point A to point B, and there's a lot of ways to go there. They could take the wind motorbike. They could take traditional tuk-tuks. They could take a taxi cab. One of our biggest competitors is just walking as well. So it depends. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that people can go. And I think the sweet spot of what we found, again, within microtransit is around convenience, safety, and affordability. So sorry, I'm a consultant by trade. I'm used to having slides, but there's a slide that I show quite a bit of, like a 3-circled Venn diagram of convenience, safety, and affordability. So if you look at some of the big players within, again, microtransit, you have the wind motorbike to start, which is certainly affordable. It's quite cheap, certainly convenient. You can pick one up at any wind motorbike stand. but especially someone coming from the West, it does not look that safe. And unfortunately, there are a number of accidents every year resulting from the wind motorbikes. And then if you look at the bus is, to the extent you trust your driver, very safe. It's also affordable, very cheap, relatively to ride the bus, but it's not that convenient. You have to go wait for the bus. You have to walk to the stop. If you miss it, you got to wait for the next one. And then also the taxi cab, the last one that we look at, certainly safe, again, to the extent you trust your driver. Convenient, pick one up on the street quite easily. But yeah, for everyday commuting and for local residents, it's not that affordable.
Right.
So really our value proposition that we see is we're able to provide all three, maybe not the best, but we're able to at least touch on all three of those areas. So for us, again, not much differentiation for people who just want to go to point A to point B, but at least across those three areas, we see as a value of offering all of them.
Totally. You're also not touching on the fact that at least with taxis and tuk-tuks and motorcycles too, you're dealing with the potential to be ripped off and scammed. Not so much on buses, but that happens quite a lot. That's really annoying. You're also dealing with taxis that just don't want to go, and you have to ask them, "Hello, please, sir. Do you deign to take me to this location?" And they, if they're in a good mood, they'll maybe let you get in. So your service solves all of those as well. Those extra problems that are sort of part of the annoying part of getting around Bangkok.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up the Venn diagram, because I've been saying for years is that when you want to go somewhere, you can there's a triangle and it's got cheap, fast, and comfortable. You can have two of those things, but you can't have all three of them. You also have to throw in there that Bangkok traffic math. What season is it? What's the weather like? What time of day is it? Is school is on holidays or not? So it becomes a pretty complicated proposition pretty quickly.
Absolutely, and now that you mention, I might have to update that slide to a triangle as well. I might have to.
I'll sell you the rights to that story for a steal. We can take that offline.
Sure, absolutely.
So, I mean, what unique challenges does Bangkok offer MuvMi then, in terms of several different things? I mean, a tuk-tuk. Your tuk-tuks are bigger than normal. Is there any challenges with parking, with squeezing between lanes of traffic? What do the cops think? What do the local tuk-tuks think? What's been your experience sort of integrating that and educating people into communities?
Yeah, so I guess, to the first point on just navigating the streets. So Bangkok is quite unique in the fact that there's large main roads and then small soy alleys. So to the point that we tried to test and see what's the right vehicle type to service communities in Bangkok, we find a lot of times that our electric tuk-tuk does the job well because it's able to navigate within the small soy alleys versus maybe a larger car that wouldn't be able to. So to that end, though, as well, there's certainly some challenges that we face, like you mentioned, around how do you find parking for them? How do you find charging for them? So for the parking side, we try to partner with local businesses around Bangkok who want service between local communities and their stores, as well as large parking partners that own multiple lots across the city as well. Just to try to narrow down how many times we need to go out and find parking for a service. And then separately, we found another way is just do it ourselves. So similar to how we manufacture the vehicles ourselves with a partner, we found that parking and charging sometimes is just easier to do it by yourself. So we're actually setting up what we're calling like these mega hub charging areas around the city. We've got one in service now. We've got another one coming online probably in about a month. And then we've got a third one lined up around the city. And these hold about 200 to 300 vehicles each.
Wow.
So quite a bit of space for us to park and charge our vehicles. And we try to put them in locations that would help service multiple areas as well. But that also helps us not having to go out and keep finding kind of one-off parking or charging areas across the city. But we still do that because, some locations are just more suited for that than others.
Sure.
And then, to your point on the incumbents on, how do we partner with them, but then also compete with them on another side? So a lot of our drivers actually came from traditional tuk-tuk drivers. So they already had the license. They already know how to largely operate the vehicle. It's just taking them from a traditional tuk-tuk now into an electric one. But we're able to actually increase our driver network as well by helping to partner either full-time, coming over as a full-time employee because we hire all of our drivers in-house at the moment.
Right.
And then also providing them supplemental income. So sometimes we'll have big events where we need a large pool of drivers. So we have this network of traditional tuk-tuk drivers as well that will call over if they just need like a one-off job to help them earn some extra income as well. So we try to partner with them to the extent that we can. And we find that by partnering rather than just purely competing provides a much easier path for us as well.
Right. I really like that. I mean, just tapping the resources that are already there in the communities that you're operating in. And I mean, that's a win-win for everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do the drivers think? Like some dude's been driving an old gas tuk-tuk for 20 years. What do they think when they come over to the electric ones?
So we've done a few questionnaires on our driver team that we actually call the MuvMi heroes, just to see what's their impressions with driving the electric tuk-tuk. So I think if you ask any of them, they say it's quieter as designed, so they're not hearing the gas-powered engine behind them all the time. And just the overall experience, because it's also a wider wheelbase, it's a bit easier to drive as well than a traditional tuk-tuk for them. So the driver experience is something that we also try to take into consideration. So from all the drivers that we've talked to, at least seem to have a good experience versus maybe a traditional tuk-tuk that they normally had.
I think also looking at this from a very meta point of view, I mean, you might be on the verge of a new sort of like zeitgeist in terms of the language used here, because the word tuk-tuk describes the two-stroke engine of the early tuk-tuks. So that doesn't exist anymore with the electric ones. So maybe they're going to have to change the name. I don't know.
Well, we'll have to find, actually it won't make much of a sound. So we'll have to think of another way to name these ones as well.
Maybe you can market it as a hand signal or a scent or something like that. You can just tell people.
MuvMi cologne I could see coming into stores soon. Yeah.
Right. So I usually keep these for the very end of the interview, and this is we give our $5 and up patrons a bit of a heads up for upcoming guests, and they can send in some questions. I usually keep that for the end of the episode, but actually we've got some questions here that are sort of the same questions that I want to ask anyway. So I'm going to roll right into these, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
So some of them may have already been touched on already with what you were talking about, but let's just go through them here. So our buddy Eric sends in a few questions, and he said, my understanding was Bangkok controlled the number of tuk-tuks allowed to operate in the city. Did this impact MuvMi? And if so, how did you navigate that? Is that true? Is there only like a limit on the number of tuk-tuks allowed?
Well, by default, I guess, because there's a limit on the number of registration and license plates that you can have for three-wheeled vehicles. So for us, one of the headwinds that we face is just making sure that we have enough registrations for all the vehicles that we want to produce. And at times we need to go out and find people who have existing license plates and registrations and purchase them in bulk from them as well. So maybe by default, they limit it just because there's a cap on the registrations that you can have for three-wheeled vehicles.
Oh, sounds like the medallions in New York City, right?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Hopefully they don't jack up the prices so people are paying $1 million for a.
I don't think $1 million US, but yeah.
Eric also asks, like where do you get your vehicles? You mentioned earlier that you build them specifically. So how does that come together?
Yeah, so we actually have a joint venture set up with a local auto manufacturer called Tyrone Group that manufactures automotive vehicles here in Thailand. So we do all the R&D designing in-house ourselves, and then we partner with our auto manufacturing partner in Tyrone to actually produce the vehicles. So by trade, a lot of our co-founders were engineers and worked in automotive industries prior to just founding MuvMi. So from the design perspective, pretty strong on that side. But then we know, there's other partners out there who are better to actually produce the vehicles. So we had set up a joint venture with them to actually manufacture the vehicles, but largely do it all in-house within our company.
Oh, that's cool. Right on. And how many do you have now? And how many, you said you were going to have 300 by the end of the year?
So we have just under 300 in service. We have more manufactured, but to the point on registration, not quite registered yet. But we plan to have just under 800 in service by end of the year. So we're just waiting on some registrations for some, and then we'll increase manufacturing as well for a final push.
Wow, that's a lot. James asked, he said, what infrastructure needs to be built out to foster widespread adoption, and can they build it without adding yet another set of wires to the skyline? So we talked about the charging stations. You've got 3 of those going on. I want to talk about those in a second. But in terms of infrastructure outside of those charging stations, are there any special things that you need to set up, or is it just driving on the roads?
Yeah, for us, it's just navigating, in between all of the different areas within each of the operating areas that we run service. So making sure that the infrastructure is there, as you can imagine, of times of flooding and torrential downpours, it makes it quite difficult for the service. But also, to your point on just making sure that we have enough infrastructure for the charging network and the parking network as well, because it's always kind of a chicken and the egg. Do you bring in the vehicles, or do you bring in the charging beforehand to make sure that you have both? You need both to service. But just daily operation across the different areas in Bangkok is a challenge at times, depending on the day or weather, and then making sure that we have all the support that we need to operate the vehicles.
Interesting. And a couple of questions from Jari. And I know you're a consultant at heart, so I know you love putting together PowerPoint decks. So I'm sure you've done studies on the price differences between fuel and electricity. What do those look like?
Yeah, so for us, we actually saw an increase in the number of users coming to our service as fuel prices went up. One of the challenging customer segments is always around how do you convince people who have a car to instead take a form of public transportation with our service. But as we saw with rising gas prices and fuel, was that people were starting to use us for certain trips, not kind of their longer distance trips, again, because that's not our service, but if they just wanted to go to the grocery store, they just wanted to go to their local coffee shop, we would be able to convince some passengers who own their own vehicle to use us instead. And that's largely from the cost differential. And then from the electricity side, like I mentioned, we partner with an energy provider in Bampu to provide our charging network across the city. So we actually get certain rates from them, and so far they've been held quite constant. So appreciate that. But then if we go into a certain area to set up our charging network, we're a bit dependent on what that building also is able to charge. So like anything, inflation is coming to all areas, and electricity is another one. So we do see costs rise a bit on electricity, but certainly not to the rate that we saw fuel prices increase. But costs across the board have been going up for us the past few months, like everybody's been feeling, I'm sure. But the electricity side certainly is something that we need to watch, because then it impacts our pricing as well.
Of course. Yeah, I bet. Yeah. And the last question from Jari, he was talking about your charging stations and stuff. You talked about these. I assume you charge them where you park in those 3 locations.
Yep. So we have three large, like, mega hubs, we call them, where we can charge and park up 200 to 300 vehicles. And then we have strategic locations in each of our areas where we partner with office complexes, grocery stores, any local business that would have some extra space for us to park and charge as well. Okay. So we do it through ourselves and through partners.
Okay. And let's get into the nerdy details a little bit. What do the batteries look like? How big are they? What's the range on a full charge, and how long does it take to go from 0 to 100%?
Yeah, under ideal conditions, it can range anywhere from 100 to 120 kilometers. We know that operating in Bangkok is not the ideal condition of testing a battery. So roughly we get around 80 to 100 kilometers of actual MuvMi service with our batteries. And then we have 2 types of chargers. We have what we call a fast charger and a slow charger. So nothing too creatively named, I guess, for either of them. But the slow charger will take about an hour to get from not completely empty, but about 20 to 30% to a full charge. And then the fast charger will take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. So
Wow.
when we first started service, as you can imagine, the technology wasn't there yet in the fast charging system. So we had the slow chargers, and then we've slowly been replacing each of those chargers. And when we open up new charging areas, we'll use the fast chargers as well. So we find it helps get our vehicles back into service quicker, but then also it's actually able to cut down on the number of chargers that we have as well, because we can get vehicles in and out much quicker as well.
Damn, man. It takes me 30, 40 minutes to charge my phone to a decent level sometimes. I'm doing pretty good.
I can't even get that. Yeah, it takes me about a couple hours sometimes.
That's right. Depends on how many times I've been checking Twitter. So as we're wrapping up here, any last thoughts? Like, where are you available? Where do people get the app? And what are your plans for the next year?
Yeah, so we're available across 12 different areas in Bangkok, and we have plans to open up a few more areas before the end of the year. So keep checking back to see where we're going to next. If you send over separately where you're located, I'll ask them maybe if they can move you up the list on places to go to next. But right now we have 12 service areas across Bangkok. They can download the app through either the Apple or Google Play stores. Just MuvMi, MuvMi. Should come to the top of the list. And then plans for next is really looking to see how do we expand across more areas in Bangkok. So that's going to be our focus end of this year into next year. And then next year, we're going to start thinking, where else do we want to go, both across Thailand and across the region. So that's what we're starting to explore now. And we're seeing what's the best way that we need to go there, whether we go and operate it ourselves, whether we work with local partners and just franchise out some of our products or system to existing operators as well. So we're starting to think about, where do we want to go to next, and starting to chart out what's the path to get there. And then separately from that, we also offer other mobility services using the same vehicles. So we have still the Tuk-Tuk service that we were founded on, and we're starting to bring that back now that tourists are coming back. So you'll see more of those running around Radinakosin for tourists as well. And then during the pandemic, when people just weren't traveling, they were staying home and didn't need to go into the office or go out as much, we had a bunch of vehicles just sitting idle. So we actually started a new service called MuvThing, where we're actually moving goods as well instead of people, just to use some of that excess capacity. Even today, when it's low on passenger demand during an off-peak time of the day, we use our vehicles also to transport goods. And then we also are looking at how do we sell kind of the ad space around the outside of the vehicles as well, and doing it both in-house and through partners. So there's a few other mobility businesses that we're starting to explore as well to get the most utilization out of our vehicles and just test different working models to see what's the right fit for us.
Right.
But that's where we see the future is how do we bring this package of mobility services both more across Bangkok and then extending outside of Bangkok elsewhere in Thailand and across the region.
That's cool. And I should have asked this question earlier, actually, but is there a maximum distance I could do? Like if I wanted to go from one end of your network to the other, is that cool?
Yeah, so you can't at the moment. So you can't go from one end of our areas all the way to the other end of our network map. But we are starting to explore, where do we want to allow people to cross over to certain areas? So as an example, we have an area in Sukhumvit, which is quite long. And then we have another area in Chitlom. So at the moment, if you want to move around Sukhumvit, you have to stay in that service area. What we're starting to explore now is we know that people in Sukhumvit want to go into Chitlom and vice versa. So what are the right cross points and connection points that we would want customers to kind of move between areas on that still allows us to operate our service efficiently and effectively. Right. We have a few test points now with Radinakosin and Chula. So if you pull up the map, you'll notice at some points you can cross over there as well. But unfortunately, for our service, and again, with the microtransit model, we don't cross over the entire network, but we are starting to see ways that we can expand the perimeter a bit for people to cross over more as well.
Right. So for now, they're just sort of local, short distance trips, but maybe looking into expanding those down the line.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yep.
Cool, man. Well, I'm excited. I mean, the Bangkok podcast intergalactic headquarters is in Tonbury. I don't think MuvMi has a presence here yet, but if you want to come over here and need someone to test it out, just let me know.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll send some vehicles over for testing, and I'll let you know when we're over, and you'll have to try one out as well.
Yeah, and if you could put up a pickup point outside of Ed's house and then one outside of my house, that would be perfect because we can just make it real easy.
If you promise to use it, a few times a day to make it worthwhile, I could probably do something for you, man.
Right on. Well, Tim, thanks very much for coming on, man. It's cool, and it's great to see these new new ways of thinking, new ways of approaching old problems coming to Bangkok, and electric tuk-tuks, man. That can only be a win.
Absolutely, yep. I hope to come on again and let you know of all the exciting things that we're expanding to next. But yeah, appreciate the time, Greg, and appreciate all the work that you guys are doing as well.
Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. And listeners, head over to the App Store or the Play Store and look for MuvMi and get yourself some electric tuk-tuk love. Thanks, Tim.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Dude, all I got to say, this is a great idea. That's my first impression. You told me about this company before, and it's just a great idea. I think that transportation in Bangkok has gotten better due to SkyTrain and MRT. But as we like to complain about, as I complained about at the beginning of the show, there are weaknesses to taxi service. And then let's just say this, Grab is less than perfect.
That's right. And it's something I noticed walking around with my mom too in recent weeks. She can't walk very far. She can still walk, but not for a long time. And it's really challenging to get around Bangkok when you don't need a Grab to get 300 meters down the road. But this is where something like MuvMi would come in really handy because they do these like short intra-neighborhood hops.
Cool. Right.
So, something like that would be really handy. But like I said, it's interesting seeing how they're going to deploy this in a city like Bangkok, because Bangkok's already famous. They got crazy boats and tuk-tuks and trains and motorcycles and taxis and Grab and whatever. But there is a desire, there's a need, there's a market need there. So it's going to be really cool to see how they're doing it.
As we've also talked about before, I mean, Bangkok is just incomprehensibly huge.
Yeah.
And, we know that the actual population is something between 10 and 15 million, and it's really an incomprehensible number. Yeah. So even though we've got better public transportation than before, and even though taxis are all over the place, and even though there's some other options, klong boats and things like that, we need everything. It's like transportation in Bangkok is an all hands on deck affair. Like, we need options.
That's it, man. That's exactly it. That's it. This is a very good case of a rising tide lifts all boats. No pun intended for the oncoming climate catastrophe. But
right.
The more options we have in Bangkok, the better everyone is. Like, it's not
for sure.
Versus, it's also. So
that's right.
Yeah,
Agreed.
They're doing really good work. So thanks, Tim, for coming on the show. It's great. And also, these guys might be playing a role in our year-end meetup on December 10th. So keep listening for next week's show for more details on that.
Cool. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss to decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with, no matter how we feel about it. Last time, Ed asked me what I thought about waitresses standing at your table while you look at the menu, so this week it's my turn for you, Ed.
All right.
This is real simple. I know that I can ask you questions about food because you used to be a dirty carnivore, but now you're vegan.
Vegetarian, but yeah, you're on the right track.
Sorry. Okay. So what do you think about strawberry milk?
Never got into it.
Really?
Just it's weird. I grew up obviously drinking dairy milk, whatever, and I absolutely loved it. But as I got older, I was aware that like a lot of it has a lot of fat. So I tried to make the switch to like low fat milk. Remember how low fat milk kind of became the norm?
Yeah.
I feel like in the 80s and 90s, low fat milk became a big deal. My mom stopped buying like the full
2%
fat milk. Right. And then, everyone likes chocolate milk, but I never got into the strawberry milk thing.
I don't know. It was so strange to me the first time I saw it. I saw this little bottle of pink milk. I'm like, what the hell is this? I mean, maybe other countries it's more normal, but in Canada, it certainly isn't. I love it. I think it's really good.
Oh, you like it? It
Yeah.
does exist in the States, but I never got into it. And then, of course, I've seen it here. It does seem to be pretty popular here, right?
I don't know, actually. My son loves it. I can't say I see people walking down the street sipping pink milk.
Right.
But I think it's really good. Yeah, I love it.
Well, I've made the switch to plant-based milk, and initially it clearly was just not as good as regular milk. But as I said, I'm a big fan of oat milk, and oat milk is pretty creamy. So I'll take my chocolate oat milk over your strawberry real milk any day of the week.
Fair enough. All right, we'll leave it at that. But I will say that you have turned me on to this oat milk, and that's all I drink now. I don't drink regular milk.
Or you're drinking it? Yeah, it's pretty creamy, huh?
It's great, man.
Thickness.
I love it.
It's got the thickness.
Yeah, get down with the thickness.
That's funny. So I guess I can't say I loathe it, but it's just not my thing.
All right, fair enough. Love.
But you're a love. I see. All right. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Jan for lending us his support at the show shoutout level. Greg, what did you find out about Jan?
Well, as it turns out, Jan is an old buddy of ours. He is actually the guy who put us in touch with former guest Chris Baker, the author of The History of Thailand, to talk about his book. So we owe Jan already for that hookup because that was a really cool show. But Jan is actually a doctoral student at Yale Law School. So him and you would have a lot to talk about, Ed.
Wow.
And he's working on Buddhism and constitution law in Sri Lanka and Thailand. How about that?
Oh, that is cool. That is cool stuff.
That's right. Now, this is why in the beginning I said that you should never learn Thai from Jan because he teaches it backwards. Because check this out. Normally when you learn new stuff, you start with the basics and you move on to more difficult things, right?
Sure.
That's how it goes. Right? Well,
Sure.
Not Jan. He does things backwards. He says, I had to learn Thai to read the case law and constitutional, legal, and political commentary on Thailand and Sri Lanka.
That's a nightmare. I've got a little bit of experience in this because a buddy of mine back in the day was doing all this work as a translator, and he had an American law degree. And so he got all this work translating Thai legal stuff. And what he found out is that it was almost like another language. There's so many Sanskrit and Pali words that it's not even normal Thai. It's almost like a different language when you get into the legal stuff.
It's like Thai squared.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's like another formal language. It's like Latin is to English.
Right. Well, Jan says it was really cool, and plus it just made the doctoral program a much richer experience, and it gave me an excuse to stay in Thailand for a year. I have these weird gaps in my vocabulary, so I can talk about, say, the separation of powers in Thai, but get me to order at a Thai restaurant, and I will not know basic words and phrases.
Funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
Too much of a subject-specific focus in what I've looked for. I think, Jan, you're the opposite of Ed and I, because I think Ed and I can order beer and the favorite foods and stuff with ease. But yeah.
So I know the easiest 50 words in Thai, and that's about it.
What did our buddy John say? He called it balance beam Thai, where you within a width of like 5 inches, you can do backflips and front flips, no problem. But 1 inch on either side, and you're like, ah.
That is it. That about sums it up.
Yeah. And Jan says, I feel like the most interesting story about me in Thailand is the number of Bangkok podcast episodes I've listened to. Finished most of the last 3 seasons in my first 2 months in Bangkok last year.
Wow.
And a ton of bonus content in the first 2 months back in the US.
Oh, that's great.
And you're a trooper, man. You do things the hard way, but it's working out. So you're at Yale.
Jan, man, we got to hook up. Next time you're in Bangkok, hit me up. You sound like an interesting guy, and thanks for your support.
Yeah, we'll order the food. You talk about constitutional law, and we'll meet in the middle.
That's right.
Thanks for your support, man.
All right. A final thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcasts on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Right on. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can send us a voicemail through our website that we'll feature on the show. You can even get in touch with me on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thank you for listening, everyone. Take care, and we will see you back here next week.
For sure. We had a weird experience last night. It wasn't that big a deal at all. So me, Nick, and Maria were in this like bar, like sitting alone.
Yeah.
And these 3 Indian guys came in, and one of them came up to us. And have you ever experienced like aggressively friendly guys?
Yes, I used to work with an aggressively friendly Filipino-Canadian woman.
The guy comes up to him and he's like, "Hi, how are you? Where are you from?" And he's talking whatever. And then he was like, "May we join you?" Who does that? It's 3 dudes. It's 3 dudes. Like, why would they? Like, maybe it was a guy who was alone. Maybe it was a guy who was alone or something.
Right.
But I would never do that. Ask, "Can I join you?"
That is weird. That's too friendly.